All right, I'm going to be talking about On Tyranny, 20 Lessons from the 20th Century by Timothy Snyder. And out front, I'll say I highly, highly recommend everybody read this. It's a quick read, and it's packed neatly with 20 overarching ideas, big ideas, and it's everything that I think so many people today, these are the words that you're looking for. These are the examples that you're trying to find. These are the references that you're trying to make. They're all right here, and it's quick and easy to read. He masterfully consolidated a dense body of work, historical facts, historical examples, important pieces of writing. They're sprinkled throughout this, and the way that he does it, each of them just feels like exclamation points on the points that he's making. So highly recommend reading this, On Tyranny. Let's get into it. Starting with lesson 1, do not obey in advance. Most of the power of authoritarianism is freely given. In times like these, individuals think ahead about what a more repressive government will want, and then offer themselves without being asked. A citizen who adapts in this way is teaching power what it can do. And so he begins this lesson by talking about the idea of anticipatory obedience. And anticipatory obedience is sort of this instinct that some people have when they see a more repressive regime coming into power. In order to protect themselves in the future, they anticipate what that regime wants and then offers, action or solutions toward that aim without even being asked. And so he goes on to provide some examples based on history. And for example, in 1938, Adolf Hitler, by then securely in power in Germany, was threatening to annex the neighboring Austria. After the Austrian chancellor conceded, it was the Austrians' anticipatory obedience that ultimately decided the fate of Austrian Jews. And so the local Austrian Nazis captured Jews and forced them to scrub the streets to remove symbols of independent Austria. The crucial piece here is the people who were not Nazis looked on with interest and amusement. Similarly, a little bit later, Nazis had kept lists of Jewish property, and they stole what they could. The crucial piece here, non-Nazi citizens joined in the theft. And so as the political theorist Hannah Arendt remembered, when German troops invaded the country and Gentile neighbors started riots at Jewish homes, Austrian Jews began to commit suicide. The anticipatory obedience taught the Nazis what was possible. Not only did they not face any backlash or consequence or protest, but people actually joined in. And an even more explicit example comes up later on in 1941 when Germany invaded the Soviet Union. The SS took the initiative to devise methods of mass killing without orders to do so. They guessed what their superiors wanted and demonstrated what was possible, and it was far more than even Hitler had thought. So, just to reiterate what's going on there, it's in these moments, in times like these, people begin to anticipate what the regime wants, and they act on that impulse. So in that case, it's not always, just the military or secret police or whatever. Sometimes it's the citizens, the everyday actions, the everyday experiences of citizens not speaking up or choosing to participate alongside the actions of the secret police. But ultimately, at the very beginning, anticipatory obedience means adapting instinctively without reflecting to a new situation. And then this gets into, right, you can, some people might be like, well, you can kind of form a narrative on those stories or examples to kind of support your hypothesis. But they actually did a study, a really impactful study. A Yale psychologist named Stanley Milgram, while he was contemplating the Nazi atrocities, he was curious about this whole situation. Do only Germans do such things? Is it only, is there something special about this circumstance? What would make people willingly participate in something like this? And so he created this study that he devised an experiment to test the proposition here. The study was, they got participants to come in and they teed it up as a study about learning. And so they told the participants, we're going to have the people behind the glass on the other side here try to learn something. If they're not learning properly or whatever it was, we're going to have you administer the shock for them. And so unbeknownst to the participants who would be administering the shocks, those on the receiving end of the shocks weren't actually being shocked. They were, in fact, a part of the study. So they were in no danger. It was a study to see what the people administering the shocks would do. And so the people, but to make it feel real, those other participants would pretend they would appear to be shocked. As the subjects shocked the participants in a learning experiment, they saw a horrible sight. People whom they did not know and against whom they had no grievance seemed to be suffering greatly, pounding the glass and complaining of heart pain. Even so, most subjects followed Milgram's instructions and continued to apply what they thought were ever greater shocks until the victims appeared to die. Even those who did not proceed all the way to the apparent killing of their fellow human beings left without inquiring about the health of the other participants. And so this just shows you, right, ultimately, Milgram grasped that people are remarkably receptive to new rules in a new setting. They are surprisingly willing to harm and even kill others in the service of some new purpose if they are so instructed by a new authority. And as a reminder, right, they weren't at war. This wasn't a kill or be killed situation. They were participants in a research study, and they were willing to go to the point of killing people for this research study. So that's just how powerful, people can be suggestible in new situations and exposed to new authority.